Hello, I'm Kurt Lidke, Executive Director of Klamath Film, and you just watched Connecting, a short film demonstrating some fun, creative things to do with video conferencing software, something we've all become a bit of an expert in over the past year. With us is the film's creators, Deanna Morris and Melissa Bouwman. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us.
Great to be here.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
ever since March of 2020, we've all kind of been living life on Zoom. And I've seen films made using Zoom to a certain extent, but not one quite like this. Where did the concept from this come from?
Well, actually, Deanna is the person who initiated. Actually, I think it was started with our ASIFA. ASIFA is an international animation organization, and we're both members of the ASIFA Central chapter. And several of our friends in that chapter were experimenting with Zoom during one of our annual retreats. And Deanna actually was really got into it, and we were socializing regularly over the summer and looking for something to do together and to create something during that downtime. And she's like, this seems really great, like really relevant. We should talk about other ways that we can play with this. So that was the way we got started.
Yeah, I must admit that when the first idea came up, it was during a Zoom meeting, and we were just fooling around, these animators, and we were like passing things to each other across the screens. And then, we were like, wow, somebody could do animation using this Zoom space, this Zoom platform. And I couldn't sleep that night. I was up at like 3 a.m. thinking of how you could do replacement animation with little cutout characters that would come in the frame. And when I talked to Melissa about it, she was like, yeah, that sounds really fun. Let's get together for some play dates. And so that's what we did. We had adult play dates with each other to just mess around with the idea of animating over the Zoom platform. And what fun that was during lockdown.
Absolutely.
It does seem like, as people have gotten into the new normal of whatever that may be, there's been more adaptive technology in Zoom with backgrounds and filters and whatnot that just out of boredom, and when you're on your 300th Zoom call, you're just like, okay, I got to change up the pace a little bit somehow. But it's all kind of secondary, like background stuff. This is much more of a proactive thing, and I find it's a really interesting blend of mediums because at its heart, this is really a stop motion animated film, but it's using people within the context of stop motion as opposed to like a little stick figure or something clay that you can blend. And I don't see that very often. Maybe it's because people aren't used to being as still as you have to be to make stop motion work.
True. Absolutely.
So
it's kind of like based on the tradition of pixelation. Mm-hmm. That I'm not sure if you've seen any of that work outside of this, but where people animate humans, and that played into it. And visual music. Visual music was a big factor to how we structured this too.
So how difficult is that to do from the end? Because I know, Deanna, you also have a film in our festival that is stop motion, and I'm a huge fan of animation stop motion, but I don't have the patience to be able to do it with inanimate objects, much less with people that are having to stay incredibly still and whatnot. So how long did this take to make?
Shooting wise, I think I think we practiced for maybe 4 hours or so, playing around with different possibilities and learning a lot about the things that would test your patience and the things that were difficult to maneuver, and things like thinking about like how position, relevant to the camera would change how things would match up wireframes. We did, about probably 4 hours of testing, and I wish I would have logged it better, but I know we did probably at least 8 hours of shooting. What do you think, Deanna?
I think we met probably 8 or 10 times. Then we brought those other people in too, and that was 3 or 4 more shoots. So I don't know. It was over the course of a couple months, And
Mm-hmm.
Melissa edited the piece. So that, was another layer of work that I don't know how long that took you. You seem pretty fast at what you did in After Effects, pulling it together. But
Yeah, once we got the structure down, it just, we were shooting 6 frames per movement so that we could hit a beat of 2 beats per second. And then once we established that structure, we could basically do anything that could move within 6 frames. So once we got that structure down, it was just more of a matter of like, okay, how do we use the seam in between our frames? And, are we trying to pass similar objects? Are we trying to have a sense of sharing and play? So we just had a couple of different themes within our sub-theme.
How far
yeah,
along? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Deanna.
well, I was just going to say, one of the things people are really excited about this because they teach over Zoom. And Melissa used this at the high school that she teaches at this fall and had
Mm-hmm.
her kids work similar projects inspired by what we did with connecting.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a great way to get them to connect.
I lived with a teacher. Both my parents were school teachers. I know the lifestyle as well as anyone who doesn't actually have a teaching certificate. And the past year has been so difficult on teachers trying
Mm-hmm.
to engage students and actually be involved in their life when everyone is stuck on Zoom calls and you can only do so much video conferencing before kids just get bored. So this is something really interesting and a whole other way that you could find ways to incorporate students in engagement, particularly I'm sure elementary kids. Last year was just absolute
Mm-hmm.
hell to try to get them to focus and pay attention on Zoom calls when everyone's stuck at home. So yeah, I think this is a great film that would be an example of ways that teachers can still get creative even if they're still stuck teaching online. So thank you for this project. How, most people, when the pandemic hit, of course, we had no idea that a year and a half later we would still basically be at the starting line for where things were March of 2020. But how far along into the pandemic, how many loaves of bread into sourdough were you before you decided, screw it, we've got to just make something creative somehow, even if it is over Zoom?
Well, we started in July, I believe. I think the ASIFA retreat was in July of 2019, no, 2020. And so I think it was just maybe a week or two after that we started actually working on and collaborating and testing out ideas in earnest for this project. So 4 months, I guess.
4 months.
5 months. 5 months. Is it 5 months? I think 4 months.
Yeah.
Time doesn't really exist anymore.
No, it's
There's
so
not
true.
really no longer
It felt
really
like a
important.
year.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of choreography in film in all sorts of different facets, but this one is on a bit of a different level in terms of trying to find that sweet spot in camera to make everything work.
Mm.
How long did it take to figure out the different movements and how tricky it was that? Because different frames of camera scales to make sure that everything's lining up and right. It's not just like you can direct someone face to face if it's a dance sequence or
Right.
an action scene or something, but you're actually having to work within the parameters and the limits of each person's camera. So did that add a whole other level of difficulty as far as the choreography?
Indeed.
Totally.
When we were using Zoom originally, like this was before they had come up with the ways you could, now you can rearrange your Zoom windows and you can try to replicate, but whoever was directing, and that was me, was the only one that could see the real representation of my screen, because I just did screen captures to just capture the Zoom platform. So I would have to say, okay, Deanna, you're to my right. Rachel, you're to my left. And so when we pass it, so it was just like definitely a lot of orientation, a little bit of practice. And then it'd be like, okay, Deanna, move your face closer. Move your face back. So we could try to align using the edges. There's a lot of directing, and that was probably the most challenging. And then the left-right thing was really challenging too, depending on who had their cameras flipped and who didn't. So I'm like, okay, no, you're other right. So there's a lot of management to get the choreography just so. And even like, and there's that one shot where we go diagonally through the frame with our hands. Rachel, our friend, is on the bottom frame, and her arm is just quivering by the end because she's like, my arm's gonna die. Because there's, like you're saying, you just have to hold so still for a while, and the rest of us had to get our zags going through. So we put the youngest one on the bottom so that she had to.
One of my favorite questions to ask in any interview is, were there any bloopers or really memorable moments from the on-set experience? But this, with you being the only one who can see the screen, I can imagine there was a whole lot of go left, know your other left type of thing. So how, anything stand out that was particularly funny from the arduous process of trying to animate all of this?
I think just, the thing that just struck me as really funny was when we merged all 4 faces and how strange we looked. We got all of our faces together in the different quadrants, but I don't, it was just generally a joyful process. Like, it wasn't really challenging. Everybody was excited to try different ideas and came to the table with different ideas, and we didn't have any, nobody's like, well, I think we should do it this way. No, I think we should do it this way. It was very, very collaborative and fun. And I think, we chose wisely with our collaborators, and it was just a great time. Nothing trying, but the funny, I think, is just like when you merge faces, that has amused me forever. I love merging faces.
Yeah, the picture on the screen here is that merged faces, and you are right.
Funny.
It was a hit of happiness to work on this project. It was really just so fun and, yeah, so joyful, as you say.
Well, I could totally tell from watching this that this was just a fun little project, even if no one saw it, just as something to stem the boredom, finding something creative and interesting to do. I think of this film almost like a little piece of candy. Like there's no like huge story arc with some deeper big meaning to this. There's no dialogue, but it's a short break from the experience. It's a short break from reality. Did you intend to have any sort of theme to it, or was this just, we've got to do something because we're bouncing off the walls, we're so bored?
I think the theme really was what the title is. It's just connecting, like connecting on multiple levels, connecting interpersonally, connecting our screens, thinking about things that we have and objects we have in common or loves that we have in common. And just, that was the underlying thing that brought it all together.
Yeah, I think so too. And then also looking at the Zoom space in a different manner to make it more playful and fun. I think that was part of the notion.
Yeah, and the grid's fun to play with, so it's fun to make patterns and things, and I'm a big fan of grids, and I love visual music. I'm not sure if you've seen much visual music or if you've programmed any visual music pieces, but I just find it so satisfying when things hit a beat. I just love it.
Yep. I'm a filmmaker myself, and I always try to edit to the audio. That's kind of my big theme, is always trying to hit the downbeat for where I make my cuts. So I completely get what you're saying. Yeah. What do you hope that people take away from watching Connecting?
I think just the joy and the fun, and like the affection between friends.
I would second that, definitely.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Deanna, and thank you, Melissa, for joining us, and thank you for making this fun film. Connecting will be screened on Sunday, September 19th at 3 p.m. in our Northern Shorts category at the Ross Raglan Theater, and it's available on demand all week. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for including us.